Hey guys, it's Kelly here again and welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my March wrap-up. I'm sorry that the camera is kind of super close, but I was way too lazy to bring out this background out from behind my bed, so this is what we're working with today. I also have like an hour to film and pre-film a few things, so I need to get going. For the month of March, I actually kind of failed. It wasn't exactly like a fail, but I did struggle a little bit, mostly with my books and mostly because I started a book that unfortunately put me in a huge reading slump, so I wasn't really able to get out of it. And it was a very weird reading slump because I would start books that were really interesting and just not get into them and just leave them aside while I was trying to finish this book. But I listened to a couple of audiobooks, I read a few comic books and graphic novels, so I also watched quite a few things. So even though I read just one book, I kind of feel embarrassed, but at the same time not really, because I'm doing this for me. So the book that I read is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This book put me in a major reading slump because I got this after I watched the Frankenstein movie, the Mary Shelley movie that tells the story about how she met her husband, how she started writing this book and why she wrote it. And I really loved the movie, and there were some quotes from the book and I found it very interesting, so I wanted to read it. I found this version from Penguin English Library and I bought it because it was really cheap. Well, not really, but compared to other books it was kind of cheap, and I started reading it and it's really interesting. Honestly, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it, I believe, 4 stars. I did really enjoy the story and the writing style, even though the writing style was very repetitive. I didn't find it difficult as somebody whose native language is not English. I didn't find it difficult in any way. I didn't have that much trouble reading it, but it read so slow, and that's kind of the reason why it put me in the reading slump, just because it was kind of slow and I wanted to read it, but at the same time I felt like it was taking up so much out of me that I couldn't really read anything else. While I was reading it, I got like halfway through and I realized that I can't really read anything else because I would start these books, I would just not get into them, and they were super interesting and I know I would love them, but I just, because of Frankenstein, I just couldn't get into them, so I leave them aside. And I decided that when I read Frankenstein, when I'm done with it, that's when I read them. And instead I took a little break, I read a few graphic novels, then I listened to an audiobook, and then I finished Frankenstein. And by the way, I finished Frankenstein like on the 31st, so I was like super last minute of the month. So the audiobook that I listened to is Subchase by Amanda Foody, and I loved it. I loved this book so much. I believe I gave it like 5 stars or 4 stars. So the narrator that I listened to, I will have her here on the screen because I can't remember her name, but she was so good. She definitely made the book for me. She brought out so much of the atmosphere, and I believe this book is very atmospheric. If you don't know what it's about, it's basically like a gangster casino story. We have a few main characters. One is N, who is a very proper lady. She's been raised in a small-ish town outside of the casino mafia city of Sin scene, and she has been living with her adoptive mother. One day her adoptive mother disappears in the city of Sin, and Anne decides to venture out and try to find her. Going into the city of Sin, which is totally not her scene, she meets Levi, who is a gang lord and he's also a con artist. Turns out that he actually knew her mother and he starts helping her because he would like to know what happened to her as well. There's also a lot of world building and it's very magical. This is a fantasy. There are some magical elements which I wasn't expecting going into this. I didn't know much about the book, but I wasn't expecting it and I really loved it. I love the magic system that they had, and I love the tarot cards that kind of made their way into the story, so I really enjoyed it. I definitely think it had a few issues concerning characters. There are also some things to be mindful of, which you can find in the Goodreads. I mean, there are people who put disclaimers about the certain subjects that are discussed and condemned in the books, but I really loved that and I gave it 4 stars. The first graphic novel that I read is Saga Volume 1, and I hope you can see it. I really wanted to read this one. I bought only Volume 1, and I am going to buy 2 and 3 now because I love this one so much. It's about the story of these two aliens from two different races, and their races have been at war for a very, very long time. So they end up falling in love and having a baby, and basically the entire galaxy starts chasing them and wanting to kill them. I really love this one. I love the art style, I love the story. Sci-fi is definitely my thing, and I do have a problem with the dialogues. I feel like they were very cliche, but that said, I really enjoyed this one, and I will be continuing on with the series as soon as I buy them. The next graphic novel that I read is called Faith, and here it is. It is a superhero graphic novel, and this was actually a gift from my best friend, I think like 2 years ago, and I never ended up reading it. I don't know why. It seemed interesting. I love superheroes, but there was something about it that just didn't quite speak to me, and now I know why. I read this. I think I gave it like 3 stars. It's more like a 2.5. It's about this main character, Faith, who is a superhero. So she has super abilities. She has some type of telekinesis, and she can also fly. She's also a super geek. She's very geeky. She loves her TV shows, her comic books, and she's kind of nerdy. And basically it's about her transferring to this town and trying to keep her secret identity so she can fight crime without having the whole fame thing get in the way. I kind of struggled with this one just because it was very, I don't want to say cliche, but it definitely was, which honestly I was kind of expecting it. It is a superhero comic, but at the same time I feel like there wasn't much going on. There was very little thought to her thought process. She wasn't built up as a great character. She was kind of one-dimensional. She wanted to just help people and not be famous, and that's basically the entire resolve for her. And maybe she gets better further along the lines, but I don't think I'll be reading any more of the volumes. It was an interesting read. The art style was phenomenal, but graphic novels have phenomenal art styles by default. Next up, I watched one TV series, which was The Dragon Prince Season 2, I think. And I love this, but I love Season 1. If you don't know, The Dragon Prince is an animation TV series with 9 episodes each season. It has 2 seasons out, and I think it's from the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is really amazing. The effects and the animation, the graphics are really great. The story is really interesting. It's definitely a little bit more on the childish side, but I still think that anyone who's a child at heart can appreciate it. The first season talks about the 2 princes who end up discovering a dragon egg, maybe last of its kind, that contains the Dragon Prince. And also they meet this moon elf. Things happen and they venture out, all 3 of them, on an adventure to return the dragon egg to the Dragon King. That's basically the first season. The second season, I'm not gonna say more because I don't want to spoil anything, but I definitely enjoyed it, and I would recommend, if you like Avatar: The Airbender, if you like animation in general, just watch it. It's really great. Next up, I watched 2001 Space Odyssey, the movie from the 60s, I think, and I watched it mostly because I read the book last month and I wanted to see what the movie was. I definitely think this movie should be remade. I mean, they remake so many other movies. I definitely think they should do this one. I definitely felt the time gap between our time and the 60s more in the movie than I did in the book, you know, excluding the graphic effects part, because I mean that's pretty obvious, but it was just very, very slow, and some of the story was changed quite a bit. I don't know if it's the original version of what the screenplay was supposed to be, or if the author decided to cut some time, but it was an interesting movie. I do believe it was really good for its time, so I'm not unhappy that I didn't watch it, but I definitely was kind of skipping through, especially like the ending. Next up, I watched a sci-fi movie that I didn't even know existed, and it's called The Signal, and this was a very interesting one. I was not expecting it. It had a bit of a horror element. Basically, it's about these teenage kids who are hackers or are very tech savvy, and they end up going after this other hacker who is jamming their signal, and he's kind of playing tricks on them and luring them into the desert. They end up finding him and aliens and stuff. So yeah, this was a very interesting one. I loved the concept, I loved the ending, and it was really, really awesome. So if you like sci-fi, I would definitely recommend it. The last thing I saw was Alita Battle Angel, and I saw this in the cinema. And oh boy, how do I say this? I hated this movie. I hated it so much. I was expecting it to be a little bit childish. That's not exactly what the problem was. I found it very cringy. I found it extremely not well thought through. There were moments that legitimately made me laugh. I mean, serious moments that made me laugh, and I wasn't the only one. The people I was with in the cinema did that as well. And in the end, like, we got out and we laughed about how ridiculous the movie was, which is such a shame because I know Alita is a manga series. I know it's very well loved, and I know a lot of people really liked it. I unfortunately did not. I found the dialogue painful. It was painful. I've never had the urge to legitimately facepalm myself while watching a movie. That has never happened, and to experience that now was very sad. The animation was stunning, of course. The graphics were amazing. The visual effects were great. Even the world building was interesting, and I would have loved to see a bit more, for instance, like in Mortal Engines, because that is also something that's a bit more on the cringy side in terms of dialogue. I still really enjoyed it because it has so much world building and it actually gets you into the world and explains things, while Alita Battle Angel just kind of glazed through everything, and there was just a very huge portion that was only a love story, and just the dynamic between the characters was super weird. It was so fast-paced. She meets the guy, and the next minute she's literally handing him her heart, and that's like a 3-day difference. I mean, you meet him, okay, you fall in love, and then you're offering him your heart. That was just very cringy. And then the moment she put it back and said, wow, that was intense, and I'm like, are you serious? That was just so painful to watch. The most painful part for me was the ending, because it was such a long movie and the ending just killed me. So watch at your own risk, I guess. That's it from me today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope the change of scenery doesn't kind of bother you. And if you read or watched any of the things that I mentioned, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to start a discussion with you. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye.